Доброго ранку усім, колеги, колежанки. Дякую, що зібрались сьогодні, знайшли час, можливість.
Good morning, dear colleagues. Thank you for finding time to be at this presentation. This is not only a presentation, but also a discussion. I'm certain it will be very productive, and each one of you will have something to say on the topic. This is the presentation of the model policy of gender equality in the media content. This activity is organized by the Government Commission on Gender Policy, the Ministry of Culture and Information Policy, National Council to Broadcasting, Women Media Organization, the Commission for Journalism Ethics, thanks to the support of the program of support of OSCE for Ukraine. We are very grateful to our partners for this. And we discuss offline in Kiev. Also, we have broadcasting of English and Ukrainian YouTube channel of Ukrainian Forum. We're grateful to Ukrainian Forum for this, and I know that we are watched in the regions. Many journalists are also engaged. I would like to invite for the introductory word Nataliya Stupnytska, who is the head of a very long title of the units, the project units of democratization, good governance, rule of law, and human rights of the program of support of OSCE for Ukraine. She is joining us online. Nataliya, please. Your introductory word. Thank you, Ms. Lisa. Dear colleagues, good afternoon, everyone. On behalf of the OSCE Support Program in Ukraine, I'm very glad to greet you on this significant event, a presentation of a model gender equality policy in the media content. As it was mentioned by Lisa, today's event is supported and organized with the support of many institutions and organizations. I'm grateful for cooperation to the Government Commissioner on the Gender Policy of Ukraine, to the Ministry of Culture and Information Policy of Ukraine, National Council of Ukraine on TV and radio broadcasting, civil organization Women in Media, Commission on Journalism Ethics. I'm grateful for cooperation and in particular for promotion of gender-sensitive approaches in media. For OSCE, independence of media and gender equality are the key components of comprehensive concept of security, and ensuring equal opportunities for women and men is a key factor for building independent media landscape. This is also important component for forming open societies based on the principles and values of democracy, respect for human rights, and this was mentioned many times in the documents of the soft law under OSCE. The media law of Ukraine is adapted to the EU standards already, and there is a number of standards and practices under the Council of Europe, European Union, and OSCE targeted at promoting the assurance of gender equality in the media. Probably you all share the understanding why gender and gender equality are important for the media, because media builds the culture and practice in covering gender profiles in news. If it is related to the balanced representation of men and women, or overcoming gender stereotypes, or also it may be related to covering issues related to gender equality, or covering issues of gender-based violence or sexual violence related to war. This is why under the projects of OSCE Support Program in Ukraine, one of the areas of project activity is supporting the establishment of new instruments for application of mechanisms of self-regulation, implementing education initiatives for media literacy, and also supporting the assurance of gender equality in the media. Many of you know the head of our project, Ms. Olga Prokopenko. Unfortunately, she could not join us today for this important discussion, but I'm really grateful for her leadership in promoting important initiatives in the area of media and development of self-regulation in this domain. Development of this document, the policy of gender equality in the media content, and the fact that the number of media editorial offices already declare the intention to apply it and institutionalize this document. It is a great example of high-capacity media community to establish instruments and new practices for self-regulation developments have set minimal commitments in the area of promotion of gender equality, adoption and implementation of which will demonstrate sharing common values of respect of human rights by the media community. It is very important that these principles are declared and also implemented by the media community. Colleagues, once again, I'm grateful to you for today's activity, and I would like to pass the floor for presentation to the advisor on gender issues of the OSCE Support Program in Ukraine, Mr. Paul Fraley. Thank you for your attention. I'd like to add that Paul will speak English. Please, if you need interpretation, we have headsets, channel 1.
Paul, please, the floor is yours.
Please.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Natalia. I'm honored to be here. First, I want to acknowledge the unwavering commitment of the Ukrainian media community. Truth is truly profound, especially during the daily horrors of war. It is multifaceted. It includes diverse voices and experiences. From a gender perspective, this means asking, whose stories are we telling? And whose experiences are we highlighting? Quality media content ought to endeavor to reflect the experiences of everybody. So this publication isn't just a set of policies or guidelines. It's a bold statement of our collective commitment to ensure that media in Ukraine not only reflects society, but also shapes it for the better. Especially in times of war, the stories that we tell and how we choose to tell them have profound consequences. They can either perpetuate harmful stereotypes or they can challenge them. They can either serve to marginalize groups of people or they can empower them. One of the most pressing issues we must address in the coverage is the coverage of gender-based violence, both domestic violence and conflict-related sexual violence. So these aren't just side stories. These are, sorry, go ahead. They're central to understanding the full impact of the conflict. And this publication, this sets of policies, provides us with tools needed to approach these sensitive topics with seriousness and respect. While being sensitive to the needs and stories of the survivors. As part of the OSCE's broader mission to support Ukraine, we remain committed to promoting a free, independent, and pluralistic media. A media that upholds the principles of gender equality and human rights. And I think when media reflects gender equality, it not only tells more accurate stories, but also contributes to a more just and equitable society. And lastly, I think this in turn contributes to a more stronger and resilient Ukraine. Thank you.
Дякую дуже, Полу. Дякую ОБСЄ.
Thank you very much, Paul. Thank you for OSCE for your support. And I'd like to tell you about how idea came up to develop this model policy of gender equality. And smoothly, I'd like to move to introductory word by the Government Commissioner for Gender Policy, Kateryna Levchenko. In November 2023, we developed a joint research. For the first time, we looked at who is at our leading positions in supervisory boards of the Ukrainian media, and what are the policies of gender equality and how the policies of Ukrainian media. We surveyed 168 Ukrainian editorial offices, and what we have seen was that all appropriate positions, all management positions are occupied by women, 41%. But at the same time, the ultimate beneficiary of media are men. Also, at the same time, what is the problem with gender equality in the regional media? They did not have, in 17 Ukrainian positions, there were no women in management positions, and it's every fifth regional media. Also, we have seen that this size of editorial offices has impact on great loads on women managers who performed all roles, and very often we see that we have outflow of personnel from regional Ukrainian media. Men don't want to go for low-paid jobs, so women often catch up this initiative and they do everything. And we also surveyed whether we have any formalized policies of equality, gender equality in editorial office. 1/3 of representatives mentioned that they don't have any formalized policy of equality. When I started to ask deeper, they said that the least, yes, what they have is the policy to stimulate women leadership. We are not talking about this. We talk about general things like the policy of gender equality in the media content. Although it's obvious that in addition we have to establish the policy of incentivizing women leadership. And when we ask further why it happens, it's not because our Ukrainian media are bad. There's lack of resources, lack of time, lack of capacities, and lack of expertise. And we require assistance of the NGOs to establish these policies, to help with these policies, and to present this research. The Government Commissioner, Kateryna Levchenko, mentioned that we don't have model policy of gender equality in media content. At the presentation we had earlier from Prokopenko, the head of OSCE project of media, and she said, let's establish it, and we developed this policy. And I'm pleased to pass the floor to Kateryna Levchenko, the Government Commissioner for Gender Policy, who does many things in gender equality. In particular, she is involved in media initiatives. Thank you, Lisa. Good afternoon, dear colleagues. Dear Ms. Natalia, dear Mr. Paul, I'm very pleased to participate in this presentation because from the birth of this idea, it was on the first floor, not on the second floor, but in the same space, in the same building. It was several months ago, and now we have this model policies which can be used by different media outlets, by different media organizations, and no doubt they can be adjusted by the media, but they create the groundwork which can help, can assist to have the principles on equal rights of men and women, non-discrimination, the principles of gender equality, to bring them from something abstract, to translate them into very practical things, and to make them part of organizational culture of the media outlets themselves. If in every area of administration we establish and develop these policies, we will be able to implement principles of gender equality, gender mainstreaming sooner, which we discussed, which we mention in our basic law on equal rights and opportunities of men and women. And what we don't have yet at the moment, we're still moving to this objective. Today we'll discuss the policy itself. It will be presented. I would like to mention also that the work of NGO women in the media is a very efficient model for interaction of expert NGO with public agencies and international organizations. The work conducted by the NGO is systemic. This I mentioned the research on gender balance in decision-making in the media outlets of Ukraine. However, I would like to mention that this organization provided us with many interesting surveys which demonstrate the situation with gender equality in the media. This includes underappreciated threat of gender disinformation in Ukrainian journalists, the position of journalists and other workers of media in Ukraine, the gender profile of Ukrainian media, and this systemic approach leads to the situation that survey is valid. The surveys are the ones that can be used in practical work, in legal drafting work, in organizational work, and the example of this is methodological guidelines on covering gender equality in media, preventing violence, sexism, and gender stereotypes, which also were prepared and presented, which are very important advice, and so they are approved by the order, the Ministry of Culture and Information Policy, as of 16 June last year. We have completed cycle of work conducted under the support of international organizations in cooperation with other NGOs, projects and programs, establishing wide network of those who use these materials. It is very important because today in Ukraine we conduct many surveys, we develop multiple, many also on different topics, many guidelines on different topics. As a commissioner, I always have a question: how are they used? Are they just put on the shelf? Are they hidden somewhere in the cache, in the computers, and the internet? Or do they become the materials which are part of day-to-day life? Lisa, thank you very much for managing to develop, with our involvement, this very good model of cooperation, and I'd like to thank my colleagues from the Ministry of Culture and Information Policy, from National Council of Ukraine on Television and Radio Broadcasting, from Commission of Journalism Ethics, for all those who assist the expert knowledge which is included into this text to become the part of policy of activity, a wide circle of experts. Thank you very much. I wish you success, and I would like this policy to be adopted in the media, and over some period of time we would know the number of equal media organizations which developed and adopted and follow these policies in their practical work. Thank you, Kateryna. I would like to briefly tell you about the structure and what is included into this policy. It is written just like it has to be written, just like every editorial policy has to be written. It is written from us, from we, from the first person. For example, if we open chapter 3 on overcoming sexism, we say that we verify our materials using the rule of inversion or the rule of mirror. We understand that the beautiful, good-looking, strong, weak are evaluations based on imaginations of our authors, on beauty and strength, and instead we give examples of what media should use instead. And so there are chapters like general part, and then there is a reflection of men and women in the content, overcoming sexism. Separately, we outline the issue of covering domestic violence and gender-based violence, as we have ongoing war with Russian Federation. A separate chapter is dedicated to covering sexual violence related to conflict or the war, we have a code of Nadia Murad. This is international minimal standards of ensuring collection and use of information. In particular, for the first time, we have reference to the protocol of interaction with the media. In Ukraine, we have NGO, which is called Sama Ukraine. It is uniting victims of sexual violence during the conflict. They developed the portal interaction with media. For the first time, it is given in this policy. For me, a very important chapter is implementation of the policy. It is not possible just to adopt the policy and to think that automatically it will be integrated. For this, we need to make efforts. I understand that now it is very hard for Ukrainian media. We have outflow of advertisement markets, mobilization of men. All this has the impact on the condition of Ukrainian media, but you don't have to have your own resources. You can engage resources of international partners for development. We don't have to have group trainings on non-discrimination. According to our survey, we have seen that over 1 year, the journalists did not take any training on gender equality, and this is ongoing process. The terminology changes, the correct lexicon changes. You need to train all the time, and for this we need to make efforts at editorial office level. So there is an important chapter on the implementation of the policy. This policy can be adopted immediately, it can be taken and used, or you can integrate any parts into your major editorial policy. Today, we'll hear from the press how they used this policy, and I would like to give the floor to Nataliya Levchenko, creative director of LB Media Forum. His expertise was very important to me. As an expert on editorial policy, and he asks me questions when I prepared this policy. How do we act in this situation? How do we act in this situation? And his role was very useful. I would like to invite Otar for sharing why editorial policies are important in the first place, why gender component is important, and how the work was carried out on this policy. Otar, the floor is yours. Good morning. Hello. Thank you very much. It was an honor for me to help with this document. Since it was published, I recommended it to all editorial offices I work with. I talked to as a model how to amend their editorial policies. I have heard the point, and I agree that editorial policy in the modern media outlets cannot exist without a gender policy. However, from the other side, on the other hand, the gender policy itself obviously will be just a beautiful document. If in the editorial office there is no effective working, helpful, real editorial policy, not just beautiful principles written in the file, which is on the shelf. It is beautiful. We have written it somewhere. The editorial policy has to be the handbook, which editorial office uses on a daily basis. These are not just principles we declare and which are not remembered, which are not mentioned ever, except for some mega crisis situations. It is the text we use almost every day. It is implementation of the policies. It's not only gender policy, but to the large extent, the gender policy can be implemented with some difficulties because part of the people have biases, part of the people mentally, in terms of values, in terms of convictions, in terms of their views, they are not going up to understand all the principles presented in this gender policy. And in order for this policy to be implemented, in order for the policy not to be just a declaration, we really need to be certain that we engage leadership in newsrooms and editorial offices, so that in the editorial office we have a person who is responsible for following, for controlling, for voicing that please look, in this situation we have to follow our gender policy. For example, one of the points which we discussed with Lisa, and where I suggested to have more radical approaches, and originally we had a recommendation to follow the use of feminitives, and instead in all these documents I always just write we use feminitives because this is the norm of Ukrainian language, and that's it. Not using feminitives for some ideological reasons. If someone wants to write famous Ukrainian lawyer or famous Ukrainian fencing athlete, it's possible outside our media in the private communication if someone likes it, but not in our media because we use feminitives. This approach may seem non-democratic to someone, and someone may say, and I like this form, I like that form, but as use of feminitives has objective reasons for linguistics and not just for the reasons of gender equality. Accordingly, we just insist on maintaining this principle and following this principle. The same is true for the norms and items of this policy, where the implementation requires greater tension than usually. For example, looking for the expert, looking for the female experts instead of male experts who's invited for 10 years, and for example, the politics is discussed only by men in our media, and in these cases it's very important that people should agree in editorial offices that this is correct. They should also follow this and they should help each other to implement this. In the beginning, this is not very simple, it's not very comfortable, but overall this is correct and these rules are correct. Once again, I always mention this when I discuss, even if now some editorial offices live without this, they don't think about this, they fill their airtime with male experts, they write about great Ukrainian fancy sportsmen without using feminitives. In the future, this will all disappear. In the future, the gender equality will be the norm for all media, which work under the standards which want to be Ukrainian media of the future, and it's better to buy this ticket to the future right now. Thank you, and we'll keep fighting. Thank you, Atar. You mentioned stereotypes, and I mentioned how they researched, how some journalists mentioned that they don't have formalized policies on gender equality because they don't have the problems with gender equality. No one discriminates anyone, and we don't need policies. We had cases like that. Also, I'd like to give the floor to Dmytro Shvydchenko, the head of the Department of Monitoring and Analysis of Research in the Media, National Council of Ukraine on television and radio broadcasting, our media regulator. Last year, we had successful presentation of gender profile of Ukrainian media. This year, the work continues. You can discuss this or importance of gender equality policy. I'll discuss all of it. Good morning, dear guests. I would like to emphasize that the practice of activity of our national regulator in the context of gender policy has almost become the history. I'd like to give the example that when in 2018 we suggested to the media, to TV and radio organizations to conduct on a regular basis the research of gender equality. We received not just refusal but categorical refusal from all TV and radio organizations which were licensees of National Council at that time. As Lisa mentioned, this year we conduct our second survey of gender profile of Ukrainian media, and this shows that Ukrainian media accept this, they participate actively in the processes related to gender equality in the media.
Хотілося б відзначити, що
I would like to note that the text, the suggested text of the policy,
в деяких частинах він
in some parts,
координується з тією політикою, який проводить
is
Національна
harmonized
рада.
with the policy of the national regulator.
Кілька прикладів.
Several examples.
Наприклад, система дворівнева, система
For example, the two-tier system of equality in the media.
полягає в тому, що не тільки контент
It means that the content,
бути такий,
not only the content
загальним
has to
принципом,
comply with general principles of gender equality, but also internal structure and internal activity of the teams of the media outlets also have to comply with the principles of gender policy.
Це пов'язані речі, тому що сподіватися
These things are connected.
колектив медіа,
We cannot just hope that the media outlet team,
який не використовує свої
which
повсякденні дії,
doesn't use in its day-to-day activity the principles of gender equality, will produce the appropriate content compliant with the principles of gender equality.
скажімо так, в даному випадку має
In this case,
він існує прямий зв'язок.
there's direct link between these two tiers.
Стосується проведення досліджень
As regards the service and monitoring by the regulator of the content for gender equality,
більшість з медіа знає,
most of the media outlets know about this. I'd like to underscore once again
Національна рада
that National Council,
спільно з
jointly with our partners,
з Національним
for example, National Democratic Institute and
провідними українськими
leading Ukrainian experts on gender equality,
відповідну методологію,
developed appropriate methodology of monitoring of the media, which is published and which is in open access on the website of the National Council,
яка використовується
which is used for the monitoring of National Council, and it can be used for
для медіа у
the media as the criteria
самомоніторингу, саморегуляції.
of self-monitoring and self-regulation.
На постійній основі проводиться таке.
On the permanent basis, we conduct this monitoring, and everyone can find it in the website of the National Council. And until recently, only general national media were object of this monitoring. Then, at the moment, the representatives of National Council in the regions are joining actively, and the result of the monitoring of regional media is also presented at the website of the National Council. Among the positive aspects of the policy of gender equality, I'd like to note a very important point: the gender equality for different types of editorial content. This means that traditionally it was believed that the gender equality principles have to be spread to information content. And here we have the representation balance, the quantitative indicators of men and women in the news coverage, news reports or experts, men, women, experts present in the news and information programs. However, it's very important that the principle of gender equality is also covering all types of content. For example, one of the main agents of gender stereotypes is advertisement, which consciously using gender stereotypes for its objectives. Also, we believe that the gender equality principles have to be taken into account for development of entertainment content programs, content for children, films, and so on. These principles are built in the policy of gender equality and methodology of monitoring of National Council.
Щодо гендерно зумовленого насильства, то
As regards gender-based violence, we can discuss that one of the reasons
цього явища в
for this
контексті
phenomenon in the context of the media
гендерних стереотипів
is gender stereotypes, which are the reason and consequences of sexism in the society.
використання та поширення
Using and spreading gender stereotypes
на міжнародному
is recognized at international level as abuse of freedom of speech.
Війна також порушує
War also
нові гендерні стереотипи,
brings forth new gender stereotypes,
які також необхідно
which also should be
в діяльності
researched
медіа.
in the activity of the media.
В минулому році Національна рада
Last year, National Council once again,
співпраці з
in cooperation with
спеціалістами
specialists
медіа розробила
in the media, develops the addition to the methodology of monitoring, which are related to
моніторингу медіа.
the monitoring of the media
Ми говоримо про те, що
onto the conditions of war. We discussed that we need to take into account in the activity of the media
аспекти
gender aspects of forced migration as a result of war,
ЛГБТ, військові,
LGBT
вшанування пам'яті
service
загиблих,
persons
полонені, інвалідність, ветерани,
killed in action, volunteers, veterans, representation of the military personnel, and so on.
необхідно разом
Many problems
спільні
exist, and we need to come up with some joint solutions.
вважаємо, що
So we believe that
політика гендерної рівності
the gender equality policy proposed
серйозним
here is
вкладом у політику
a serious contribution into gender equality policy in the media, and we hope for fruitful cooperation going forward. Thank you.
Дякую, Дмитро. Дякую.
Thank you, Dmytro. Thank you for mentioning
Компонентів, зокрема, про
important
військових,
components like LGBT, military personnel, people with disabilities, very important for cross-cutting work with the gender equality policy. And I see that Andriy Kulikov would like to take the floor. This gender equality policy is recommended by the Commission of Journalistic Ethics, and Andriy Kulikov made many comments in this policy, and it is feasible, it is important that we not just mention how good it is, we need to understand that this is a live document. It has to be changed, to be filled and adjusted and amended, and I pass the floor to the head of Commission of Journalism Ethics, Andriy Kulikov. I'm interested if you follow the principle of gender equality and the list which we filled, because I paid attention that I was mentioned as a speaker. A speaker is dynamics, and we have presenters, and this borrowing of English terminology, English words in Ukrainian language, it levels and adds to use of feminitives. Otara mentioned that feminitives exist in Ukrainian language, they have to be there, and we don't have to replace them with words we borrow from English to be fashionable. Similarly, but first of all, it's a very useful thing, really, not just because it mentions the best practices, the best experience, generalized and advised and recommended. It also outlines the way forward, and the content is also important, but the content doesn't have gender significance. I'll mention about this later, but colleagues. The word colleagues is of common gender, doesn't require colleagues both male and female. When we use female colleagues in this way, we draw the line. We have common gender for many words. Like when we have multiple for colleagues, it includes both men and women. It is very traditional in Ukrainian language. I'd like to express my gratitude to the team of Espresso channel for their work. I was requested to say this by someone who doesn't watch Espresso all day. Thank you. So the words of content. Recently, I had to edit a translation from English, and the person was captivated by gender equality ideas, and the female expert was not enough. She invented the new words for female experts, which doesn't exist. So sometimes people just invent new feminative words which don't exist in Ukrainian language, and there are proper feminatives which exist for a long time. Also, sometimes have common words for both men and women. So this is a stereotype which breaks stereotypes. And this is very positive. And as Otar mentioned, talking about female lawyers, we have Association of Ukrainian Female Lawyers. It deserves a separate discussion. Just the issues of language. And here also I read what she quotes. There is a paragraph. Understand, beautiful, weak, strong, and so on. This is judgment based on our author's opinion. And there's no feminative here, no female authors. This is just not to overload this. We accept all your comments, and we also have a quote, ombudsman. We suggest a different title, but it also starts with the word ombudsman. And we have female government commissioner, and Kateryna made a lot of efforts to change this ombudsman for ombudswoman, but it was not used going forward. And to learn gender equality or training on gender equality, it is very necessary. However, I hope it will be practical training, and I'm grateful to my colleagues who do their work and give advice and ask for the advice, and they show by example how to do gender equality in their work. It's not what is your gender and how you addressed it. Who will do the work on time, which is necessary. In the public radio, we have the chairman of the board, not chairwoman, Kurmanova, and we're doing the common work. We have common gender, common work. Thank you, and I will read it once again, because I read it once. I'm the head of the Commission on Journalism Ethics, and I emphasize that when we use the language as the argument, we need to treat it with care. Thank you, Andriy, for your sensitivity. We'll take into account all your comments. They will be integrated into the next updated version, and I'd like to thank the colleagues from the Commission of Journalism Ethics who voted and provided their recommendations and changes. Natalia Levchenko was involved actively. Thank you very much indeed, and I'd like to discuss with Anastasia Ravva, general producer of Espresso. Espresso demonstrates leadership on this matter. You're part of the list of quality media from the Institute of Mass Information. Also, you're a leader, and you integrated the policy of gender equality in all platforms of Espresso. I saw that this policy is adapted. It is based on this policy, but it is modified. Please tell me about this work and why it was important for you. Thank you, Lisa. I'd like to thank you and the Commission on Journalism Ethics and Women in Media and OSCE and Government Commission, National Council for publishing this policy. you rightly mentioned that at the moment, especially in the times of Great War, media doesn't have time to sit down and to discuss and to develop this policy. So this document is for us, for our media, for Espresso, it expedites the process, and we produced this policy, and we made it part of our editorial policy. We published it very quickly. We adapted it for us, for our needs, and last week we published it at our website. The policy of gender equality on all platforms of Espresso, and we're committed to our audience, to our team, to all Ukrainian media, to follow it. To be the first is very pleasant, but also very responsible. And as a TV channel, the TV channel as a media group, which was established in the first days of Revolution of Dignity, it is a matter of principle for us to follow all European values, human rights, equality policies, and this is why we did this. We followed this from the first days of existence of Espresso, and this relates to our team. For us, it was never important what is your gender, what is your age. Only professionalism was important when appointing to management positions, when discussing remuneration for work. It was always our principle. It was healthy relationships in the team. It was very important for us. As regards our content, we always tried to follow. Just an example, it was many years ago, 5 years ago, when we still produced political talk shows, and we tried to follow not only political balance, but also it was very important for us to have women. From 6 guests in the studio, half of them should be women, and our guest editors understood this, and they also were responsible to ensure representation of women in all programs. And as regards our media content, we also try, as you mentioned, in all types of our content, we try to follow this balance, this equality. This is true for stories, for documentaries, for reports, for articles at our website. We never calculated. We did this approximately. We did not calculate the percentage ratio, but now we commit, and now we accept the commitment. In our team, we have a person, a woman, who will be responsible for this, and she develops this methodology now how to monitor our content. It is huge in all platforms. We have 24/7 broadcasting. We have huge volumes of materials and all resources. However, we'll invent how to do it efficiently on a daily basis, how to examine this. This will become the example, and this methodology can be used by other media outlets as the example, as a model, and I urge all colleagues to introduce these policies as part of editorial policy. It is great. It is a great tool for our colleagues, especially for new team members who come and receive this immediately, and there are no other questions that they have to follow this, and this policy is a great baseline for this. Also now we're looking for opportunities for trainings. You mentioned this, and this is very important, and we didn't do this for a long time in teams. Maybe we can do it together, we can do some trainings. And immediately the announcement on 28th of September online from 11 to 13, we'll publish this additionally. Jointly with National Council on Television and Radio Broadcasting, media will conduct under support of UNESCO the training session, which is called Gender-Sensitive Journalism, from editorial principles to content. This will have Anastasia Ravva will be a speaker, Nataliya Levchenko, and I invite you, we'll discuss the UNESCO indicators. Great, so we will join the event, and at the end I'd like to mention, in my view, in the media content, the huge problem is stereotypes on behavior of women and men, on professions, especially now during the war, when we say that guys are fighting in the war, but not only guys, it's also women. They make equal efforts for our victory, and in Espresso we issued a number of materials which we called Women at War. These were reports, TV reports, articles at our website, and recently Together with Dmytro Publishing House, we issued the book Women at War. Unfortunately, 3 heroines of this book already died. You can buy this book in the bookstores. It is the practical work of journalists and editors. It shows how important it is to have the role of women now during a full-scale invasion. Thank you. Thank you very much for this inspiring story on how this topic is used by Espresso. And now I mentioned Suspilne TV. And today we have Yulia Feder with us. She's the member of the board of Suspilne TV. In Suspilne there is a policy of gender equality which is related to labor relationships mostly, but obviously it is also related to content. Please, can you discuss your work in Suspilne? Thank you. In Suspilne we have gender policy at the moment. We work on expanding this policy, have diversity, equity and inclusion policy covering 2 components: integration of gender equality into corporate culture of Suspilne TV, and in the content and the strategy of our broadcasting and editorial policy. We cooperate with BBC actively, with the Council of Europe, with European Broadcasting Society, and by the end of the year we plan to come up with the policy and also the implementation plan for the next year. We established the department for this, headed by Anastasia Ravva. Jointly with Nastya, we work on this to make sure this is not only on paper, but also in reality inside Suspilne broadcasting and also in our materials. Thank you. This is great. Also, we have Marina Snikirska, Deputy Head of Editor-in-Chief of Lvivia Bereg. Maria, you mentioned this was that editorial policy is impossible without gender policy. Now I repeat this phrase all the time. In Lvivia Bereg, do you have editorial policy? Do you have gender components in this policy? And how do you work with this topic? Good afternoon, dear colleagues. I'm very pleased to see all of you. Now, call ourselves OBUA. Lvivia Bereg is our previous name. Now we call ourselves OBUA. This is our brand name. In the editorial policy of LBUA, there is a part related to gender policy. It was included in May this year, not so long ago, and it is an important component. The absence of this was the focus of the media experts who were requested to analyze our draft of media policy, and we asked the experts, and they mentioned that this part is missing, and it was added when I reviewed this draft, not draft, but this publication, this guidelines. I'm not sure how to call this document, this guidelines. I understand that we need to add this chapter with some quotes from this document because it's well structured, it is very clear. And it's very clear about things that should not be there. When there's prohibition, it's very easy to make a decision. I don't need to think if we include this or not. If it is prohibited, we just don't include it. I'd like to mention my work in Ukrinform. Back then, we had our editorial policy. It was published at the website. You can find it. And there is a part related to gender issues, including there's mentioning of Murat's code and the issue of covering violence during the war. We encounter this very often in the media. It is a very complicated topic. It is very difficult for the work. It is very difficult to discuss with these people. It is very difficult to prepare. A journalist who will go for discussion. There are few empathic journalists who can respond and stop the discussion when the person goes back to their stress as flashbacks. So these recommendations, these guidelines included here on sexual violence during the conflicts are the most valuable. It is true. On the other hand, if we talk about content monitoring in big editorial offices, in small editorial offices, there are no resources for this. We can also create a department. We don't have people for that. You don't have to monitor 24/7 your content. You can select some periods, 2 weeks of the year, for example, and you can try to monitor some parts of the content. Good morning. I'd like to add, Suspended for more than 2 years, we're engaged in the initiative of 50/50 international initiative. It is a monitoring tool for men and women, presence of men and women in the contents and different contents. It is very easy to integrate in the editorial office. You don't need a separate department for this. We can share this practice. Yes, I will be very grateful. And also, to discuss what Dmytro mentioned, that we need to implement this in editorial office. We need to implement a physical gender equality, not only in the content. Frankly, this is hard to do it now, because guys go to war. And now, 1/3 are guys and 2/3 are girls. And just recently, we have sent a guy who was working with us to the army. He self-mobilized and will hire a girl instead. And now we have a problem of discrimination of men, because it is true. Because now employers prefer to hire a woman because she's stable, and when you hire a man, he is mobilized immediately. It is a different matter, but it is true. I'm very grateful for this document, for releasing these guidelines. I'm happy that media is aware about this, and so those who want it, they will implement this very easily. Also, we have Andriy Support Program, Director of Ukrainian Pravda. I did not expect a question, probably I will ask you about Ukrainska Pravda. You did not publish your policy of gender equality, but I know that you work on this strongly. Can you share your experience? Yes, listen, thank you. First of all, thank you for this ongoing support, this push, which is very useful. I'd like to thank OSCE, Women in Media, Ukrainska Pravda, as the leading online media, has the policy we updated at the moment. We update all the package of our policies. We started with the gender policy, and then we will go to artificial intelligence and other things. This policy is called Ethical Code for Editorial Office on Gender Sensitive Policy. It was adopted at the level of the editorial office in the beginning of May, on May 2nd. Sergei Masayeva, the editor-in-chief of Ukrainska Pravda, is responsible for this, and all the team is aware of this policy. They follow this policy. We'll publish it. It's a technical matter. It will be published. It will be in open access, just like all the package of editorial policy of Ukrainska Pravda. It's a complicated process because the website is heavy. We modify it. It will be a separate chapter. You will be able to read it, to review it. It will be available in the nearest future. At the technical level, I promote this process. Also, an important point I'd like to make, I'd like to give the advice to the regional media. I work with donors a lot, and it's very often the regional media, if they adopt this policy, it just turns into the document on the shelf, on the Google disk, or the website, and they don't take care of this. If regional media wants to work with the donors effectively and fruitfully, they need to take into account the donors. For donors, it's very important, and they are very thorough about this, not just the availability of the policy, but following the policy is important for the donors. Regional media have to take this into account. Thank you for this dynamics. We will move forward. Thank you for the news from Ukrainska Pravda. Before we move to open comments, we have also Kateryna Levchenko from Detector Media. Detector Media is part of the coalition of gender equality in Ukrainian media. It also includes Ukrainska Pravda. We conducted several activities with coalition, including public agencies. Detector Media works with themes of gender equality. They actively support the initiatives for women in media. Maybe you can say several words about your work. Good morning, dear colleagues. We work full time on this topic, and as a person who works in the media, I'd like to mention that in the section media, gender policy appeared back in 2015, as far as I remember, and the most valuable in the story was that the initiative came not from the top, not from the management, but from the journalists. They just came and they said, it is not comfortable for us, we want to use feminitives. So this is how we think, how we talk in our day-to-day life. We want to work like this, and this is how it started. We are also NGO, not just a media outlet, and at some point we implemented the policy of gender mainstreaming. This is more complicated. It is the approach in which we are responsible not for what we do only, but we try to engage stakeholders we work with. And I believe that this standardized policy we discuss is very helpful for all media, because when you have this instrument, when everything is written down, you can easily take this as a template to add something, to modify something. It will speed up the use of this instrument in Ukrainian editorial offices, including in the regional media. Thank you. If there are any remarks, Victoria Yermolaeva, the editor for Gramatsky Radio, you have a policy of gender equality for a long time. How is it implemented? Gramatsky Radio is one of the first media outlets to implement. I like this fight for being the first. I like the space of fighting for being the first. Recently we had the audit from Reporters Without Borders, and the audit, when she reviewed all our internal documents, we use our policies that are published on our website. They are in open access. She was surprised that we have them. And she said that very often the first recommendation after the audit is gender policies, because they are missing, but I reviewed and I read and I understood that our gender policies should be expanded, because there are things which we don't take into account when we sign the previous policy. So now Gramatsky Radio needs to raise the issue of readopting gender policies, because these are most up-to-date. Thank you for this instrument, it's really effective. As I mentioned, this is a live document, it is a live instrument. It is updated on the annual basis, it is adapted. Thank you to all those who made presentations. Maybe you'd like to add something, to add a remark, or two remarks. Andriy Kulikov. I was thinking one of the reasons why in Gramatsky Radio it happened long ago that they had gender policy, because Lisa Kuzmenko worked there, and she was engaged in this. It is true. And this is the example of consistent, unimposing, but at the same time sensitive work on one issue, but actually it is a great set of issues. Thank you, Lisa. Thank you, Government Ombudsperson on Gender Policy, Kateryna Levchenko. Thank you, Lisa. Overall, my words I mentioned in the introductory words that the policy has to become the part of organizational culture and to be implemented in real life. These words were reflected and validated that the policy is already implemented and it will develop. This is very positive. However, I always look forward and I think what we need to do. So I really would like to have the analysis of implementation of these policies as of the end of 2024 and then during 2025. I believe that our event will become a good push factor for many media outlets to adopt these policies. So we would invite you to conduct this work. Next point, when you update your documents, I fully agree that this is an alive document, a living document, just like all documents which are implemented in organizations. When you work with the documents, you find every day what you need to update. I'd like to draw your attention to terminology. We already discussed this. The domestic violence is one of the types of gender-based violence. Very often we read that we work with gender-based violence and domestic violence. Then we have a question. What is domestic violence? It is part of gender-based violence, actually. But on the other hand, sexual violence related to the conflict, we don't have this. It is right, but many organizations treat it as part of gender-based violence. It is shooting at all of us because we forget about men affected. More than half of them are men, taking into account prisoners of war, and also there are thousands of cases of gender-based violence in the peacetime. Thousands of cases are related as the cases of war crimes, as crimes of genocide. And some organizations, they just recorded it this way and it's convenient for them. And this is my fighting for terminology now. We have joint terminological war with Lisa, because the way you call something determines the policy, how it is formulated further. So listening to the discussion and talking about the words with common gender, it is very important to develop the interpretation dictionary of gender equality, because often we have different meaning using the same term. We examine the issue with a consultant who examines the issues of dictionaries. We use the Dictionary of Gender Equality of the European Union, European Institute of Gender Equality, which we translated. It was also my request under the support of Ebert Foundation. It is available at the website of the Cabinet of Ministers. It can be used, however, it does not reflect the reality, because every year new terms appear. Today, we say not about gender-sensitive policy, but gender-transformative policy, because to feel discrimination is the first step, but then it is important to do practical things. After we feel it, we need to transform it in the actions and other situations. Just an example. It is important for us to work on the dictionary. Also, these policies are important, not only for the media, they are important for any organization, for any entity. Gender equality policy, it may be different in different areas. It will have specificities in different areas. For me, it is an important component of a big area we're doing now related to recovery of Ukraine. When we say that we need to rebuild Ukraine, build back better, we take into account all those principles of human rights and gender equality, and the platform of ensuring gender equality and recovery, which unites many public agencies, international organizations, and NGOs. We don't have media there. It is a drawback. We have Valentina Alexandrova with us, who is the coordinator of this platform. We established an international organization as a result of Ukrainian Conference on Recovery in Berlin, International Alliance for Gender-Sensitive Inclusive Recovery, which unites donors. It is the hint for all of you. We do everything for each project, each program of international technical assistance, regardless where it is targeted. Construction, transportation, education, healthcare, everything. It should have a gender component. It is help to regional media, to the regions, and not only regional. We need to ask about this. It has to be there, and donors also accept commitments to increase this percentage, to use the gender-based approaches, to apply gender disaggregated data. And these policies are missing in NGOs, and in the majority of them, women-led organizations mostly have these policies, but also there is room for improvement, and this positive example when you take and implement these documents, this is very necessary at the moment. Thank you. Thank you for your participation, for your informative presentations and remarks. Thank you for watching us online. And it's a reminder that this gender-based policy can be downloaded at the website of the Commission on Journalism Ethics or at the website of Women in Media, and also the Cabinet of Ministers website. It will be published there. Thank you to our defenders, to the armed forces of Ukraine, thanks to which we can be here and work live. Glory to Ukraine, and stay safe.